Hello everyone. I feel like in a way this video needs no sort of intro. If you have a phone, you know what is happening in the world right now. Something that I found really interesting is that a lot of my Caucasian friends were messaging me or, through conversation, and a lot of what I was hearing was, I'm so surprised that, this is happening, and the death of George Floyd. Um, and what I could kind of see from social media is that so many people of color were saying, why are you surprised? And I'm definitely one of those people who is like, why are you surprised? It's absolutely devastating what is happening, but in no shape or form is it surprising. I remember when I first moved to Australia when I was 7 years old, and I was in primary school, and I had a really hard time. I had a hard time accepting, myself as being different, and also it was really just emphasized, the fact that I was different. And obviously back then it was probably in 2005, 2006 sort of time. So, a bit of time ago. But I remember in primary school that, so many of the kids would treat me differently, and some of the language that was used, or even when I went up to high school, that sometimes people would say to me, we'd be having, I don't know, a conversation and make a passing by comment of who wouldn't want to be white, or say things like, I don't know, there's so many. Something that sticks out to me is kind of the beginning of my 20s, I was at a dinner party, or I don't know, hanging out with friends, and a girl was talking about someone that she had been dating at the time, but then things didn't end up well, and she said, oh yeah, but it doesn't matter because he's fully black. So that's kind of just to give you a context in terms of my experience when it's come to racism, or people just asking me, being like, oh my God, I can't believe you're black because of the way that I speak. That is something that I have to deal with every single day, from the moment that I moved to Australia. And obviously I love living in Australia. I consider myself Liberian Australian, African Australian, whatever you want to say, and I'm proud of that, and I love living where I live. But from a very young age, growing up in a African family, that I was always taught that, Cynthia, you are different. And when you go into that world, outside of your home, you have to prove yourself 10 times more than, someone who is white, Caucasian. And I think for so many people of color, that's something that, our families have always taught us. I just want to say that racism is everywhere. When it comes to music, when it comes to the way we interact with each other, when it comes to the way that we love. I remember back in 2014 when Nicki Minaj created the song My Anaconda, and still to this day, it's an iconic song. But what was so interesting to me, even at that age, I think I was probably 17 or 18, was how different she was treated as a woman of color for expressing her sexuality and also her body. And you can look back in the music industry and look at people like Britney Spears or Shakira or J-Lo, so many women. When those women express their sexuality, the world praise them. But when a woman of color is out there shaking her booty, twerking, doing her thing, people could not accept that. They were commenting on her videos saying, ew, that is disgusting. And I even see it now on social media. The only reason now, curves are really seen as beautiful is because white women, started really feeding into that trend, and then it became beautiful. And that's something that we always have to just accept. And I see it even in the fashion world. And obviously, me being a model, that I have gone to agencies and agencies have said, oh, I'm sorry, like we already have someone who looks like you. And then I'll go and, look at their books and whatnot, and it'll be one black girl who literally looks nothing like me. And I live in Brisbane. Even in Brisbane, when I see so many of the boutiques, I hardly see diversity, and it is something that 100% breaks my heart, but it's also something that I just have to deal with. And every single job that I get, I have to prove myself 10 times more than my Caucasian counterparts or models. And it's just something that I just accept, and I just go in and do my thing and always prove myself. And I even see racism when it comes to love. And obviously, if you didn't know, I was on Love Island, and, that whole experience was definitely something that I treasure, and the producers and everything really, really supported me. But even, thinking back to the first recoupling, as a woman of color, I was the last person to be chosen. And what's really interesting when I think back to that experience of going on the show, I remember having a conversation with one of my friends, and I said to her, like, oh, I'm so excited to go, but I'm also really nervous because I know that 100% the people are gonna treat me differently. Like, they may not think that I'm just not gonna be their type, essentially. And that's definitely something, whilst I was on the show, that I had to deal with as a person of color. And I'm listing all these things and going through all these things, but it's just to reiterate that as people of color, every single day that we step outside of our houses, we know that we are going to be treated differently, and that the same rules for a Caucasian person does not apply to us. And that is a fact. That is a fact. So everything that is happening in America at the moment, it's because Black people, we're tired. We're tired of reiterating the same message over and over again. But the thing is, people are not listening. It is not enough to just share a photo. It is not enough to just say, oh, I'm really sad about that or whatnot. It is not enough. What you can do is educate yourself, have conversations, and I think it's been really telling for me seeing, my friends who are posting about what white privilege is and trying to educate themselves, compared to, people that I know who've just said nothing. That is 100% telling. So what you can do is educate yourself, read books, have conversations. The conversations that are hard to have, those are the important ones. Don't just sit there and consume the information. But the only way that change can actually happen is if we stop looking at racism as just, that particular group's problem, and realize that racism is about human rights. It's about equality of every single human being. It does not matter where you come from. It does not matter who your father or your mother is. It does not matter, because every single person in this world should be seen as equal. Every single person in this world should have the same platform. And I am so incredibly proud of every single person that is bringing their voices together, speaking up about this topic. Don't just sit there being complacent. It actually really annoys me. This is a time for change. And what I think is also really important is that we shouldn't have something as devastating as what happened to George Floyd in order to speak about, racism. Even here in Australia, racism is still alive, not even just being, someone who is of African descent. When I look at the way that we treat our Indigenous culture, it's absolutely disgusting. Like, so many people here still celebrate Australia Day, and it actually blows my mind. And posting, photos and Instagram stories. So if we want to even talk about what's happening in America, I feel like we also need to take a step back and look at what's happening in our own country, what's happening to our neighbors here, because the way that we treat our Indigenous culture is disgusting. At the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is, when, everything dies down and people stop posting about what's happening in America and how racist America is, we have to take a step back and realize that racism is still alive. You know, in America, here in Australia, it's 100% everywhere. In the UK, like, it is everywhere. And for me, it is not surprising, you know, what is happening at the moment. Black people are tired. We're tired of continuously fighting for our rights. Anyways, that is what I wanted to say. And, you know, as a person of color, I have to prove myself every single day. And that's a fact. Okay, bye guys.